it really changed some environment and expectations of how the Ethereum operates. Our goal and what we're trying to propose here is that standards can be developed faster. We are much more accurate about what is actually important to prioritize by giving community and basic protocol users and customers to give us a development of the protocol. If you're using Ethereum, if you're a customer, and this is very like product mindset, which I think in Ethereum generally was missing because
Improvement proposals are an integral part of continuous evolution of any ecosystem. They hold special significance in Ethereum ecosystem, and I have been a strong advocate for process improvement and for promoting any tool that brings these benefits to the community. That already gives away today's theme because we are going to talk about a project that is very similar to this. Welcome to Ecosystem Project Demo episode 25, brought to you by ECH Institute. I'm Pooja Ranjan, joined by Akash and Velin from our team. Today, we have a very special guest in with us, Tim, also known as Peersky, the founder of Pyramid Labs. He will be sharing about his project DIP.box. Welcome to EPD, Tim.
Hi everyone.
Well, we understand DIP.box is an aggregated data-driven view of the activity, contribution, and health across major blockchain ecosystem. I'm looking forward to learn more about the project, but before we go in there, for our listeners, Tim, could you please share a bit about your journey in the Web3 space, especially in Ethereum?
All right, Pooja, thanks for the intro and thanks for giving the opportunity to speak up today here. I joined Ethereum, I think, around 2020, and I got... I was Bitcoin miner in very early days, just on my work running computer, and I sold it off quite at a cheap price back then. And it took me a while to understand what was the benefits of Ethereum. I used to work as a microwave engineer and electronics hardware, a lot of signal processing before. And this is why I used to have a good GPUs, good computers to actually Bitcoin mine in the evenings when I didn't need to run the simulations on my antennas or whatever. Yeah, and then when I got excited about Ethereum, one big part of my life actually is that I'm building communities or experimenting with communities since I'm 14 years old, where I used to play online games and I used to collect this huge online guilds of communities of people where guys of 40 years old age would listen for me something, talking with them when I was just 14. And from there, I don't know, I was creating a few communities in my hometown, helping people with creative expression and managing artist communities, and also doing a lot of business, so also doing some project management and team management. So for me, this question about how to coordinate people always was one very paramount. And in Ethereum, one of the things which got me really excited about Ethereum was the community and people around it. So that was my journey. We started doing there some simple games and analytics. We crawled actually a lot of data about NFT transactions when we started doing that, created some papers for research around how people use Ethereum. And then I moved to more serious work. I worked at OpenZeppelin as security architect for almost 2 years. I contributed to securing Compound DAO, Sandbox, and also worked with some big institutional customers. For me, it was a great opportunity to see the industry, to learn, to visit the events, meet great talented people, and also learn a lot about the DAOs and the very thing which got me very excited from the security perspective, and see a lot of process challenges there. And it also brought me to Ethereum and EIPs, which is part of the journey, I believe.
Of course. Thank you so much for sharing this. When you are part of OpenZeppelin, I can understand it is very obvious that you would get involved with ERCs and EIPs. People are very much helping out with making implementation of all those. And I loved your background, starting from 14 years old as a gamer and then finally getting into Bitcoin mining, kind of OG. Even if it is you joined the ecosystem in 2020, that's not too late because that's when people started to learn more about Ethereum. So welcome to the Ethereum ecosystem, and I'm so excited to learn about this platform that helps, maybe, I'm not sure, I'm going to learn about it, that is going to help us manage EIPs in a better way. So without further ado, stage is all yours, Tim.
Yeah, so the Pyramid Labs is obviously it is a game of, actually it's a wordplay around being peer to peer and surrounded by peers, but creating the kind of hierarchical structure, which is pyramid, which we, like as society, we need some stability, and pyramidal structures, they are the most stable. This is why pyramids in Egypt, still stand. And I want to start with outlining what brought me to the DIP.box as a project. And these are the, first of all, excitement about that RFC process itself, which I think it inspired EIP Process, which is more famously known in the internet as request for comments, and it brought the Ethereum improvement proposals and also Ethereum request for comments. But the more I learn about it, the more challenges become visible, and that is, first of all, very complicated workspace, which basically doesn't exist. So you have to know how to use GitHub, how to fork. There is no just common sense, simple collaboration tooling available. For one of what I found is a cornerstone element of not just Ethereum, but modern internet, actually, if you take all the RFC process in the context as well. And then having myself also worked and tried to contribute to the EIPs and creating ERCs, I could not notice that there are bottlenecks which are sometimes not transparent, but also sometimes it's just very unclear. I think even for the EIP editors, how to prioritize amongst all of these thousands of proposals, where actually to put them, how to just create the most efficient collaboration system for everyone. And that also brings to the third point here, is lack of feedback, transparency, which is basically, for me, is relatively newcomer, so 5 years in the space out of 10 for Ethereum. It's been quite a challenge to understand why there are 2 forum boards, why there are half of the forum threads in ETH research are dead, and where should I post if I need to have some feedback. And then if I create, I go for ERCs to get the comments, where do I actually get the useful communication from the maybe more mature ecosystem editors or even developers? And well, last not least, but I always, since childhood, I'm very excited about getting people together to work on building something together. And blockchain infrastructure today is very fragmented. And from one side, it's great because it's decentralized, so we can experiment, but then there is this kind of glue together to see all of the picture, all of the standards, who is working on what. So these are just few challenges. And what we are proposing in DIP, and what I was researching for the last year since I basically left Open Zeppelin, was how do we create streamlined state machine for proposal lifecycle, where basically we want to have some fixed pace of transparent understanding. If I create some idea for ecosystem, how actually I should expect it to progress, when I should expect to get the review, feedback, etc. And DIP.box largely is about creating this state machine for proposal lifecycle. Now, I tried here to make it very illustrative. I hope the picture works. It tries to show here a conveyor belt, which is I used to work in hardware manufacturing, terms apply to me. If I want to create a system which is acting as conveyor belt, I want to EIP start from someone who's, joining the ecosystem, he's logging in, he has some authentication for his outer identity. He's getting some collaboration tools to create those EIPs, to improve them, share with his friends perhaps, and keep them even private, but then at some point publish them for community, to get some first rounds of feedback where community might just push back and say, we don't need that. And that would push it from conveyor belt out, so the maintainers and rest of the community doesn't have to work through that later on. And then the maintainers, obviously, they would also have their opinion, and the core developers, and the rough consensus of Ethereum, which is very interesting to improve. But eventually it should get to the knowledge hub of there is this work and it was finalized, and it's either used or is it in the EIP process there is no rejected, but there can be withdrawn, so author can be convinced that his proposal doesn't make sense maybe right now, and he could just withdraw it. So when we created this project, as I was mentioning, one of the key things we try to keep in mind is that we want it to be multi-tenant, and we want to support different projects in the ecosystem. Now, There are quite a lot of projects that copied basically the EIP process of Ethereum to their own repositories. Polygon, Starknet is just few of those. But even other layer ones like SUI ecosystem, they also have SUI improvement proposals. So in a way, I think this is like one of the greatest actually gifts of the Ethereum community to the blockchain infrastructure and industry, is like this whole concept about that we have these repositories with improvement ideas. And our idea here is that like for multi-tenancy, it also means that if there are layer 2s on layer 1s, let's say Polygon and Starknet, there are layer 2s on Ethereum, that they can be part of that. And we can actually create the whole holistic integrated workspace for all of these projects to collaborate and share. So some of the basic things like EIP editing forms today. In DIP.box, we make them very simple. So we copy the field requirements from CI pipeline validation in GitHub repository of existing ERCs and EIPs, and we copy these requirements, do the form validation so that if you are creating EIP, you don't have to think about whether the CI will pass or not. The software takes care for that. We create some collaboration tooling and we want to improve that. So one of I can show here is that we can reference EIPs and we can actually show immediately in the status of the EIP which is in review. So here in 7999, which one is the latest one, we can immediately see that it's dependent on the in review stage 7918, which means that they are in some kind of dependency graph together. Now, extending the idea of cross-tenant collaboration, it means that it could also reference like layer 2s, could reference layer 1 dependencies, etc. when they're creating their own standards. And well, one of the things we really want to also invite, and like I think personally, and also discussing from my team and other people, that it's very important to have some kind of community feedback or community validation for the EIPs. And my assumption, which I want to validate, I hope validate with you, Pooja, today, is that for EIP editors it's important to understand which standards, which proposals should be prioritized in the review process. I assume today you're doing this based on the author's activity to just push it for the review, or maybe Ethereum Foundation core developers themselves saying, or maybe contacting manually the major layer 2s ecosystems and asking them. Whether for a more autonomous decentralized system, we can actually easily index, say, how much was gas used by everyone in Ethereum over the past quarter or some season, and give based on that some ability to give the feedback and a review for, let's say, layer 2 ecosystems, for node operators or just other community, which EIPs should be prioritized, for instance. And this gets a little bit in like kind of a DAO kind of philosophy here. However, 1 year ago, I tried to speak with Ethereum Foundation, I tried to speak with Tim Beiko and Vitalik, and I understood that for such big and very important infrastructures as Ethereum today, creating circular dependencies on a decentralized governance is a huge risk that developers would just not take. Therefore, when we create DIP.box now, our idea is to create more indicative features to give these opportunities, but not push them as a core feature of the platform, and certainly not make the whole thing fully automated, but more just give more tooling and more visibility and more options for the maintainers and community as well. So for community, we actually, like for the past year, we've been doing a lot of research about how do we make this decentralized decision-making more streamlined. We have some other prototypes where we're designing, like basically reimagining what it is to have a forum board. We have it on another domain, that's another thing we're building, but there's a lot of stuff we can easily integrate to DIP.box, which is including, let's say, Discord, Farcaster. And then we're generally very excited about, using research Ethereum Foundation does on anti-collusion infrastructure, modern quadratic voting, zero knowledge proofs, and just applying rating systems. Like big inspiration for me is projects like poll.is, if you know, they're quite famous about using like Bradley Terry model for having kind of governance decisions, say, in Taiwan. So I think it's quite interesting space, which can have a lot of opt-in features over time. We create also, we're working at maintainer administrative models, so that would be basically for people like Sam or Pooja who are working on EIP editing side to get their administrative panel where they can sort to-dos by the priorities, say, indicated by the community, or just do their regular work, which we are really curious to learn more about, which would involve also, in my opinion, one of the important and missing point right now in EIP process is a formal review feedback to authors. As an author of EIPs, I noticed that it's very hard and it's not transparent today how to get a review from maintainers, and one of my EIPs down in this presentation will show a case where I submit a proposal into review and then it gets to the stagnant, which for me is kind of surprising because my expectation actually is that review subsequently should have some feedback, which I didn't get, and I was like, it's moved to stagnant. Okay, that's probably a feedback I have to take here and work on a DIP.box. So, and then eventually the knowledge hub is the outcome of the work. This is what community produced. All of that flywheel which was spinning there is the set of the standards, and today the .org website is quite simple. Here we are adding search by title, by author, filtering by statuses, adding some statistics, analytics, and eventually we want to add their AI assistants, which are today quite common on like good, fair documentation portals. So why Ethereum can't have it? So some new student who is learning about blockchain can come into the portal and just ask AI about something in the EIP process. And what's important here is that since we are crawling all of the commit history, all of the diff history, then these AI assistants, they might have much more context than just like purely crawling like the latest version of Ethereum repository. So in DIP.box, actually, this is where we started. So we want to create this editing experience. We want to create this collaboration workspace, but it's not a product we can like showcase and get our attention. And it's kind of tricky to get the attention with it. So we started with crawling actually the EIP repositories themselves to understand what are the metrics, how actually it looks like in Ethereum. In the project today, we crawled all of the commits in all of the EIP repository, ERC repository, and also rollup improvement proposals. And we crawled diff from every EIP, and we can see how many commits were there, how much days was it out there. And we also see a lot of metrics from that, like say how these protocols are centralized. So basically from all of the authors who actually tried to contribute to the protocol, how many were accepted to the finalized author stage. What is acceptance rates, which you can see like the formulas I outlined from our code down here. And then we bring this author statistics. For instance, it's very interesting to see here that according to our authors page right now, like if I take all of the protocols, including the crowd protocols for Polygon and Stark, where like Vitalik influence over the standards development, which means like how much of his name is across all of the proposals, is around 10%, so it's not actually that much that many people would expect. And we also can see that there is some pushback from the community, so it gets some insights about what is the protocol governance policies applied to the practice and shown in the historical views. So we see, like, say, for Vitalik, that not all of his proposals go live. And so it's interesting page, but it also, I think, I can open this view list a bit later and show more details, but I think it's great actually for contributors who want to grow an ecosystem, because it immediately shows you which EIPs repositories people contributed to, and it's good for career growth. I think it's great for learning and collaborating together. So our goal and what we're trying to propose here is that standards can be developed faster. We are much more accurate about what is actually important to prioritize by giving community and basically protocol users and customers to give us a development of the protocol. Then we also want to expose the bottlenecks, and obviously we want to have safety first. So here I just wrote the duplicated to decentralized storage, but in a large way of thinking of this, we want to make sure that it's as robust, as redundant as possible, and in general give this benefit of increased speed, reduce costs, just the automation of manual work, and streamline the collaboration, which is for me long research topic of my life, I guess. But then there are some less obvious benefits. Few of those which I'm excited about is that actually businesses can, say, issue requests for proposals. So let's say if someone wants to focus researcher attentions on the pre-confirmations, then they could issue a grant or rather request for EIPs directly on the EIP's portal. Why not? Having spoken with some academic researchers and professors in universities, I know that there is this problem that if researchers today want to contribute to blockchain protocols, actually don't know where to seek the information for the grants. So, and it's very fragmented, referring to my first slides, it's very fragmented, so you have to go and seek across hundreds of websites. And if you're say working on a protocol research level, actually the here EIPs is the place you want to go. So this is one. Then, well, it's maybe more obvious, but yes, multi-tenant nature, it allows to compare ecosystems in a project. So maybe it's more for institutions today, but if they are asking a question, why should we use Ethereum and not SUI, and you can put them in one chart, compare their governance policies, or layer 2s, like why we should use Optimism or Arbitrum or Starkware. But also, if you would need to have an expert in, say, Starkware and Ethereum, the authorship page is useful for that. And then last, for me, is very interesting topic, because eventually I think that what EIP process creates is intellectual property, but actually it is so. Any of the EIPs will have this CC licensed Creative Commons license on the very bottom. So the whole idea we're working here actually scales to decentralized intellectual property. And I have an article on that. It's a clickable link. So if you have a link for presentation, you can link from there. Otherwise, you can share the link. But I have an article where I'm sharing that basically there should be some of the protocol improvement proposals or discussions under some kind of restricted access. Otherwise, it creates game theoretic way, which may be not really beneficial for open source community in the long run. So that is quite long way from where we're at right now, but there are thoughts in these directions as well. So I want to just quickly go through the case study with Ethereum, particularly EIP ERC's repositories. So when we run our crawling and we got all of the metrics, we could see that at this point today, what I'm calling bluntly centralization score here is basically how many authors tried to get to the final stage and they couldn't, versus how many distinct authors actually got the final stage. We can see that 74% of authors actually are not getting to the accepted finalized stage. We can see immediately from our metrics that there is a clear bottleneck in the EIP process. So there is 137 last call proposals, 173 in review, with only 132 in the finalized stage. It means that it's quite scary, I would even say, because if tomorrow last call, expectation for the last call as a name would be that tomorrow they will be finalized. If tomorrow there is 137 finalized proposals, it's a huge change for the ecosystem. And then we also can see that there is almost no process of actually withdraw the proposals. So there is almost no the Sankey diagram flow that someone would get to the review or to the last call and actually withdraw his proposal after. And most of it, we can see almost 50% of the ecosystem proposals, they just go directly to the stagnant. So it's either it shouldn't be published at all, or there was some problem why they couldn't actually get forward, or just withdraw them. And we also see that average proposal lifecycle is 156 days in Ethereum today. And then one of the explanation for, say, why there is so many stagnant proposals maybe is the screen on the left here, which is what the EIP editor or proposer has to go through in order to just submit a pull request, valid one. So you have to go through the form validation CI pipeline, which is not necessarily someone need to know how to fix that at all. It doesn't have a correlation of skills to being a good protocol researcher, in my opinion, for instance. And on the middle, you can see like the example I mentioned before. So I created the EIP, which I believe is quite important, and I think it's quite cool, and it could help a lot on a large scale for protocol. But obviously, I'm not a core developer, so my opinion, it's hard to get review and it's hard to get feedback on. And I can see from this analytics, so basically you can see from analytics, it was in a draft stage, then it went to review, and it's been in a review for almost 150 days. And then it was moved to stagnant state, and while I cannot here have some explicit marker that it didn't have a review, but that was my case. And then another one, which on the right hand side here is another my personal experience. So when there was a review for 7702, there was a lot of security concerns about what it's going to break. It really changed some invariant and expectations of how the Ethereum operates. Now, there was no incentive for me or any kind of remuneration I was getting for going and seeking for these vulnerabilities, but I was able to prove that if the proposal already in a review, I think it was review or last call, if it passes as is today, that it actually causes a bunch of smart contract application level protocols to be vulnerable because they rely on some pattern which will stop to work as they expected. And the problem there is that like just writing this post on discourse and getting like likes or whatever, it doesn't get any kind of it doesn't propagate the value back to me and any contributor. So there is no incentive to go and like actually actively participate as a community and push back, let's say, on a proposal, which is very hard to just account if you don't have platform for that, right? So what we create for EIP and EIP's repositories right now is that when we try to think how we can actually make Ethereum actually use us, is that I assume that from my personal just enterprise experience that most likely it's not going to happen, that we can just create some solution from scratch and the Ethereum Foundation says it's great, we want to migrate, we want to move all of our EIPs to your platform. So it most likely must be something lean where you can just start to improve what you already have. So in current state in DIP, we have GitHub integration where we have written an app. So when you do the edits on the EIP, so we create new EIP, what we actually do is we just create a pull requests, and it requires some permissions in the repository. So obviously we don't have it with the EIPs today. We have our own fork where we test this, but you can see it on the side. Basically, it creates a pull request with the file changes, and eventually, in a lean way, it allows us to propose this integration path. Now, this is a bit scary diagram, but I'm almost done. I think it's the last one. So it just shows that there is a lot of like. In this lean approach, there's a lot of manual work because we need to, actually when we crawled the EIP repositories, we learned how much the formats changed, the markdown, the font matter on top with the metadata for the protocols, it changed, and the names of the statuses also. So, and some of the proposals moved from one repository to another, and when we tried to do analytics, it was quite hard to actually go through all of these boundary cases. But eventually, like if we want to use it as a lean approach, we just use a repository master branch as source of truth. We just follow whenever something is merged to main branch, and we synchronize our service to that. All of the contribution back, whether these are authors or maintainers doing some edits, it just creates a pull request, or perhaps for maintainers, it could give some more permissions, but in the current diagram and the current proposals, it doesn't require any really permissions except for managing pull requests. So there is quite small security footprint for integrating such a system for existing repository. So I'm almost finished. I just wanted to notice that obviously there is like two ways of managing those repositories today. So one is a GitHub, which is Ethereum Foundation does. Another is a DAOs, which they use platforms like Tally or Snapshot. And Snapshot, for instance, something what we propose is like kind of opportunity for this community feedback system, but they don't have this visibility of EIP-like repositories, of RFC-like standards. So if you're trying to find, say, Arbitrum improvement proposals, it's actually very tricky. You can see the vote, you can see the discussion, but where is actually the standard that they created? It's not rendered. So we envision that DIP platform will be able to actually go and get to this one ecosystem, multi-tenant infrastructure, also protocols like Lido or Arbitrum, etc., which also they contribute important pieces of all of that puzzle, blockchain protocols. And so my personal motivation in this is that for my personal projects in the real world, I want to build real world solutions. We have in Latvia a problem with the forest cut out by the government, so we're trying to create a non-profit society there to fight and just buy out the land and have a non-profit to govern the forests so that we can teach our government how they should treat the forest management, because they're just like cutting in unsustainable manners. We have similar projects in Indonesia, and basically when I learned about the DAO and governance space, I realized that we need to have a platform we can streamline those discussions. And it's less about just having a DAO where like, people have token and vote, and more about how do you actually decide on some complicated topic together and make sure that the merits and the end results matter really. So it's pretty much it. I hope you bear with me, and I'm looking for some questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Tim. I have been in this space since 2019. I feel motivated whenever I hear that people are having hard time understanding what's going into the ecosystem, what is the right way of sending a proposal or making a comment or providing feedback. I feel motivated because I understand that this is an area of improvement for us where we can ensure that these information are easily available. So thank you so much for sharing this presentation as well as your personal experience, providing us some insight about what are the area for improvement for our team. During the presentation, you have already covered a few questions that I had in mind, yet to clarify a little bit more, I have some questions to go over if that's okay with you.
Sure, let's go.
All right, so let's begin with the one core problem in blockchain governance that this platform is trying to solve. I know you have mentioned about multiple issues in this ecosystem, but if you have to suggest that this is the one core problem in blockchain governance, DIP.box is solving for us, what that would be?
I would say this is facilitation of intellectual property. Like that would be just very abstract. It allows me to cover like everything in very non-saying anything. So I don't know if it's a good answer for you.
I think I was trying to understand what DIP stands for, but you very well explained. It's decentralized intellectual property.
I like to play with the words. So I would call like from one side, I call it decentralization improvement proposals. On another hand, I don't know, it's just part of my nature. I like to play with the names. So if I can like put the two names in one, I'll do that. But I think like most probably what we are trying to really achieve is to make Ethereum and standards development more transparent and more efficient and more engaged, and scale the great thing which Ethereum invented, which is this repository, to help communities maybe not who don't even know and don't want to think about blockchain, but they also have the same problem of coordinating.
In decentralized world, coordination can be challenging. Very well, I'm going through the website and it suggests that this is an aggregated data-driven view of activity, contributions, and health of major blockchains. So let's talk about Ethereum in general. So if we are considering Ethereum, which all repo information does it include?
So today in our website we did a crawl of Ethereum EIP repository, Ethereum ERC repository, and as a separate track we crawled also rollup improvement proposals. So if you go today to ethereum.dip.box, the view you are getting is ERCs and EIPs. The rollup improvements are not there.
Yeah, just wanted to be sure of that because I was just trying to relate with the numbers, countings and everything. We'll get there. But before we go there, I wanted to look into another aspect of it. You already have mentioned multiple benefits of the website. Who, in your mind, would be the main user or the consumer of this particular website? Could it be author, editor, or the community?
It's a good question. I think all of those, it obviously has to start from... So in the forum right now, honestly, the editing experience is just something proposed on a table, and it's envisioned that EIP editors and maintainers would be the core users. Eventually scaling it to community who would get the tools, and it would get these incentives. Basically, if we have some feedback system, we could invite more community to join and onboard more people to becoming editors and maintainers eventually.
All right. That is great. Maybe to begin with editors and then authors and then invite more people. It's a great idea. I'm curious, the data that we are reflecting here, where can we find that data that supports the chart available on the website? Is it downloadable? How can we actually validate the correctness of it?
I can share the link from my repository. I made it open source. The data itself is in the database, which is not available, but you can run the crawlers and you can crawl the dataset. It takes somewhere around maybe 1 hour or 2 hours and you get it. And I'm happy to help to set it up.
I was curious because I was trying to understand in one of your slides of safety, you mentioned about storing this data in decentralized storage. It's like standards are duplicated to decentralized storage. What does that mean? Are you trying to store data from the GitHub?
Yeah, so I don't trust Microsoft that much. So if we are speaking about now it's like network state is very popular, term. Like people say about self-sovereign, etc. So what happens if tomorrow GitHub goes down? So you have to rely on the fact that some contributors had the GitHub, the repository checked out locally. You have to hit them basically on Telegram or somewhere and hey, who has the last commit from this branch or whatever. Obviously, GitHub is super stable. If it goes down, a lot of projects will go down. It doesn't cost much to duplicate that. And we are, I'm actually a big fan of Swarm by Victor Throne and the Swarm Foundation. I know they used to try to build this decentralized store layer, so I think it's interesting to explore this.
Of course it would be. So as of now, the data is not on chain. Is that a correct understanding?
No. We're crawling right now this into our database. The next step would be just to make our database IPFS, and we are not storing anything on chain. The only thing I was proposing to do on chain, and I'm looking to your feedback, is basically what I would propose is let's index how much people have spent gas on Ethereum last quarter of the year, and let's give them some kind of vote credits. Not necessarily tokenize them, but we can have internal record. For some big wallets which are automated bots who do not have this ability to climb those, we can just it's Ethereum Foundation or it's Arbitrum or it's Coinbase, just give them manually this assignment and give them, based on that, ability to support the EIPs. So that would be probably the most on-chain thing I would imagine right now. However, I want to notice here that we have another project which is called Rankify.it, where we are creating basically a DAO bootstrap algorithm where people design basically they participate in a forum-like discussion, and that discussion results governance power. And there we put everything on chain, but it's an opt-in feature and it's on a separate domain right now. So in the DIP.box there is no Web3 integrations.
Sure. I'm happy to hear that there are more project in pipeline that's going to support the ecosystem. Well, my next question is with respect to one of the challenges called as bottleneck in the ecosystem. One of the charts that you shared during the presentation was bottleneck is visible. We want to understand how to withdraw proposal. There are proposals in stagnant statuses and all. I'm curious to hear if there is a particular plan or proposal in mind. How can we actually resolve this bottleneck?
Yeah, so I think right now maybe there is one thing I don't know how that should be done, but it has to have some answer coming from EF or you, is that there is no rejected status.
Actually, just to add a little bit more here, the withdraw is a process, is an action, but it is also as a status. As a status, we call it withdrawn. And because EIP process is more author-driven, it is on the author if he or she wants to withdraw the proposal. If they do not take any action, the proposal by default will move to the stagnant status. while a stagnant status is resurrectable, withdrawn isn't.
All right. Yeah, I think I got you. Yeah. So it's like author driven. So, well, then inherently some bottleneck might persist because some author can just like make a commit automatically once a 3 months there and keep it in review. Well, I mean, I would say that maybe like I don't want to comment on like whether it's right or not decision. I don't know the rationales behind, but the proposal we have, what we can do right now is what we propose basically. Let's say that there is a seasons because we know that the core developers want to release hard forks on a specific pace. In project management and also in the hardware, more like supply chain management industry, there is like this very well known thing as just-in-time management, where you don't store anything in your factory, you just get the supply whenever it's time to actually use it. So why don't we have EIP just-in-time standard management, where all of the phases are strictly written? So I was showing in our diagram the flywheel, where basically there was like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. One thing we could explore, say, if you create a draft EIP, it cannot be in review faster than 1 quarter. So it has to, you might create it maybe 1 day before the quarter ends, and then it gets to review. But it still is quarterly based. Then when it gets to the review stage, obviously this is 1 quarter for maintainers to review the EIPs. And if there is too much of those, then it's literally a bottleneck, which is just dependent how many maintainers is there in the Ethereum protocol. Therefore, there must be some way of prioritize which one you take first from the heap. So you have to take the heap and make it a stack, and take from the stack like by some priority. This priority, I suggest doing what I was saying, like let's index the gas used on Ethereum, give community ability to vote. So if you're using Ethereum, if you're a customer, and this is very like product mindset, which I think in Ethereum generally was missing, because in traditional product companies, you would have this like net promoter scores where customer can give actually review to your product and say like net promoter score, it basically stands of how likely is your customer recommend some other of his friends to use your product. But also just, this kind of feedback systems, they are important, they must be set up, and they would help to prioritize. And then obviously that last call status, it's also could be like, say if it's in the last call, it means that in 3 or 4 months, it's going to be included in the next fork. And then when fork goes out, you could make it just in time. Obviously, there is a lot of probably needs of perhaps even rethinking that state machine statuses, because let's say if EIP editors passed it through and they consider that this is great and core developers all agree, the hard fork inclusion, obviously it also requires node clients and execution clients and consensus teams to catch up with that. So perhaps there could be like some status which is like in progress or something which describes it. So in a way, some things we can start doing now without doing drastical changes, but over the larger period of time, I think there needs to be some improvements in the status machines complexity itself as well.
Right. I love the word that you have added for state machine and a proposal around that. But just for information, at present, this status progress is not dependent on time except for one, which is called as last call. For status changes on EIP section, generally it is dependent upon the stage, the network upgrade stage on which this proposal is. Now, if people are curious how we can go for acceptance or rejection of a particular upgrade in the first place, my recommendation would be all core dev call. So all core dev calls are very public. There is an agenda on Ethereum/PM GitHub repository. This meeting happens every Thursday at 1400 UTC. So anyone with a proposal that wants to be included in one or the other upgrade should talk about that proposal in all core dev call. Once there is a signal from client team that this proposal seems interesting and they have bandwidth and they would like to prioritize it, that particular proposal will be listed as proposal for inclusion in the upgrade meta EIP. That's how we begin. And the status change for all core proposals moved based on the network upgrade stages. For example, if it is in PFI, proposal for inclusion, it could be in draft/review. But when it goes on testnet, then it goes for the last call. And when it is finally on the mainnet, then it goes to the final. So here the time dependency on the upgrade size. However, for ERC proposal, that's not the case. For ERC proposal, there is no dependency of selection for an upgrade. It is mostly on author. When they find their proposal is ready, they can move it from draft to review, and from review to last call. On last call, they have to be there for another 14 days just to make sure that they are closing everything they received as a feedback, and there are no open feedback or pull request suggestion. Otherwise, they can move the proposal to the final status. So this is on a very high level how the proposals are managed at this time. So it's less on maintainers, it's more on the person who is behind this proposal or the group.
So I would want to add here some personal experience that first of all, the core dev calls, and they are not scalable to the worldwide, and we spoke about that. I'm personally located in Asian time zone. For me, it's like 9:30 right now. So I cannot imagine Ethereum to scale as a global system if you cannot invite all of the global community to participate. There is a lot of smart people around the world who would not join these dev calls, not at any case, because it's just in the wrong time. And it's a tragedy of having a planet a circle, but I think the solution for that is that there just needs to be more asynchronous communication and more formalized asynchronous flow, which people can read through, leave the review, give the formal review, perhaps even just have it on a call and then record some. So DIP.box is also about that fact that I like having live calls, but it's not scalable really. And also from the authors of ERC repository, my personal impression is that, well, if I can just myself push it to the finalized stage as an author without having real support by community, then I don't think the standard will worth of much. But otherwise, yeah, it's very interesting to know that you have the processes around Lest and synchronizing hard forks. Yeah, it's exciting.
Right. Maybe they won't be able to move it to finalize because that's where EIP/ERC editors comes into picture. They will definitely go back with some kind of recommendation, show me the implementation of it, like if there are projects interested in implementing these proposals and things like that. But you raised a very good point of the time constraint. Not everybody is very comfortable to join the ACD calls, maybe because they are living in different part of the world. But we have, in the meantime, find out a solution for that, and there is a series called PEEP and EIP, in which we invite author to share their proposal, demonstrate the proposal, how it is going to help to the ecosystem, and we can perhaps share that with the all core devs. So we are working around mitigating all these issues, all the challenges that present contributors are facing, and to help with new ideas, we invite them to participate in EIP IP meeting. That is a place where you can provide feedback on the process. You can help us improve the process because all these processes are documented in EIP 1, and with the discussion in EIP IP meeting, we can perhaps update EIP 1. So we are just trying to fill the gaps here. We will invite people to reach out.
You're doing great job. You're doing great job.
So much.
I try to support, but I'm really a big fan of everything you do, guys. And I don't think anyone in the world really is doing that brilliant work in this direction right now. And even things you're mentioning right now, I immediately think, oh my God, but we can put that all of these EIP calls, all of these opportunities for editors could be integrated in DIP.box. So I could have email notifications for authors so they're invited to actually go to some call and have more visibility, because as an ERC or EIP author, I might not know this. So yeah, I have all of these ideas immediately, how we can actually build it even more better for everyone.
I'm glad we are collecting more ideas to have a better system, more robust one. Well, let's move on to the next question that I have on my list. It's about the historical trend chart, which I noticed on the website, and it talks about something called a centralization chart. Taking a look at the table, it seems like Ethereum mainnet and rollup on Ethereum are highly centralized. That's my understanding with the number. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What are the criteria for determining that they are centralized? Or what do we want to say exactly from highlighting this centralization part over there?
So just first disclaimer, first of all, is this is my bold figuring out this metric, and I'm sure it can be improved. It's just the query perhaps is too simple right now. Right now it's showing basically how many, it counts distinct authors in the ERC or EIP repositories together, and then it compares how many distinct authors are in the finalized stage proposals versus how many distinct authors went to the, haven't withdrawn their proposals. So basically they got. And then the query might be not perfect right now, because ideally we want to write a query where we want to go they went to the review stage and then they couldn't get to the finalized stage, which means that they tried to get accepted and it's a distinct authors they could not. So the way to think of this is let's say Vitalik Buterin creates a proposal about 7702. I was around there when I saw it, and immediately everybody talks about 7702 because he's obviously key opinion leader in Ethereum space. So his influence of the protocol has a negative black flick of the same coin, which is a centralization of the protocol of if tomorrow Vitalik is gone, what are we gonna do? So roughly this is the centralization score is about this. There is another which is acceptance rate, which is not about, it's counting exactly the. Yes, so the acceptance rate, it counts proposals, not the authors. It counts how many finalized proposals are there versus eligible proposals, which I counted as total proposals from which were withdrawn and stagnant removed. So there's just two metrics to show this.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think I'm gonna correct my understanding here. Earlier, the word centralization was giving me a negative impact of it, the system is dependent on one thing, but I would like to take this centralization as a committed contribution. So more centralized, that means we have a good or a better holding of contributors in the ecosystem, that they are coming up with new and new proposals every time. For now, it is with because perhaps he is one of those contributors who has been in the ecosystem for long, since the inception of the ecosystem. But perhaps this can change in future, and it would be a good metrics to showcase that we have retention of developers and contributors to the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, and for this we need to have some visibility over the metrics. So actually here we have the authorship screen, and if I just filter it down to Ethereum. Now, there obviously there is some deduplication work I have to do, because and this is one of the challenges with working with GitHub, because here's Vitalik Buterin, here's V Buterin, and we did a lot of deduplication already at this point, but still we should actually sum it up. But I wanted to show something that we can in mind combine these numbers. His influence in my way of counting that is not that crucial. Is maybe yes, it's 15% of proposals are authored by Vitalik Buterin. But if you take a look on accept the success scores, there are people who had much more success in creating proposals and actually getting them finalized, and they had quite a few proposals as well. So we can clearly see, and the idea is to showcase it also for institutions when they decide now which protocols they're using. They also are looking at this metrics, so they will want to compare which rollups to use, and this is a great stimulus for rollups, for protocols to invest in their researchers and invest in the support. But what I wanted to share here is that I don't think this metrics are that bad today. I think they're great. Maybe it could be better, but still. And also, centralization score. I mean, it's obviously a balance between having quality of contributions versus diversity of contributions. So it's not necessarily good or bad thing. And perhaps we can also coin it somehow better at a later point. But when we'll start adding their other protocols, I'm actually very excited to add the SUI or some other layer ones to see how they will compare to that, because I assume that there will be protocols that will climb, they have huge total value locked or whatever, and then when we analyze who is actually contributing, there will be 1 or 2 persons.
Right. I would also like to share one piece of information for people who are following this podcast. The way an EIP is documented, accepted, and implemented it actually does not begin with the draft status. It begins with a forum called ETH Research. If you have any research, you first go ahead and document those research. Generally speaking, those researchers I by default added as an EIP author because the idea is coming from them. A champion can pick it up and have further discussion on ETH Magician Forum. ETH Magician Forum is going to be a place where all sort of comments are invited, especially with respect to proposal. Like, we don't want to go for technical comments which are only limited to documentation of the proposal, but we focus more on the specs related comments on ETH Magician side. So the next step is like documentation of proposal, and it goes on ETH Magician for community initial feedback, like whether it could be passed as a draft or not, if there are any similar proposal already existing or not. But if a proposal is passed through all these phases, they find it to be unique, then they go into review and other stages. So generally speaking, if we find Vitalik's name all over the places, it's not because he has authored all the EIPs, it's just that maybe some of the suggestions that he did was picked up by a champion and that was further converted into an EIP. So it's not more of influence, it's just a reference.
I think this is also a problem in ecosystem because people, when they create the IPs, they're creating their own personal career. Often they contribute years of their life, and there is no visibility of that. So you cannot go and like find all of these topics and understand how much they got support into the particular EIPs. And I was showing this, it was one post of my finding for EIP 7702, but say before when I was working at Open Zeppelin, we talked there with contributors, with ERCs, and there was also frustration about this. Sometimes they contribute some ideas and they don't get an authorship. And it's understandable that there is this champion system today. In my view, it's also a lot dependent just because there is no workspace. So DIP.box is imagined as a platform where eventually we would want to have the vision that with research and ETH Magicians are either integrated as API or fully migrated, but it becomes cohesive one space discussions as well, because then we can track the authors' wallets, authors' GitHubs, everything, and they can get this recognition back easily, and it can be automated. So
very well. In continuation of that, would you like to maybe share around 6 to 12 months roadmap for DIP.box, or what's there that we can expect like in near future?
So honestly, right now I spend like 1 year doing my personal research about these governance problems in the DAO space. My personal dream as an engineer and entrepreneur is to build the products that help people, that help communities to scale. So obviously I'm trying to build this as a product today. But we are at the stage where we are basically talking to foundations, looking for the grants, and eventually offering them as a product. And it depends whether we have a grants or not, or we have to go this way of directly offering a product without initial support. But optimistically, if we can have support from Ethereum Foundation, say in 6 months from now, we would be happy to have community feedback modules where we would index the gas usage, we would give the ability to support the APIs, we would create a tenant administration log where maintainers could add their contributors and would have tools they need to easily manage the statuses. Not depending on the conversation and the needs of particular organizations, say Ethereum Foundation, we would need to discuss, do we need to build this as a GitHub integration or not? But generally speaking, yes, I would say editing experience certainly would be there. Maybe the forum and discussions things would not be directly integrated, but some simple notifications. For instance, the part you mentioned about EIP calls, well, I would certainly imagine simple workflow where we can send an invitation email to the contributor or author, inviting him for particular events which are related to his initiative. And then in a 12-month period, obviously, we would start to adding there more ecosystems on board, perhaps even some DAO who could try to use the system. Because one of the problems I was mentioning that, like, say, for Arbitrum, you cannot see those proposals at all. They are not that transparent at all. At the end phase of them, which is I can go and read the standard. And also we would certainly try to more, store it in the decentralized storages, ensure that platform is secure. Like one of the risks factors here, which I'm taking seriously, that if I'm creating EIP editing workspace, there will be high net individuals joining that platform, so the platform will be constant attack vector for anyone who's trying to make bad things and hack. And we just literally just now we saw this like vulnerability with npm packages on debug and what was it, chalk dependency. And I scanned, by the way, I have a Twitter post, I can share the links with you guys. I scanned the Ethereum Foundation repositories and I found a bunch of dependencies, which are like, you can use a GitHub query I wrote and it's like popping up. But obviously, like just like a lot of risks. So we would make sure that it is safe, secure, transparent to use. We would refine the analytics as well, so it's well defined and really comprehends the truth. It would be fully open source, so everyone could validate and verify. And and we would talk to editors, community, we would look for what kind of features we can implement more.
Thank you so much. We are going to remain optimistic about it. And I understand, as you being a past security architect, that is definitely in there in your mind. And the system that we are going to see eventually would be robust, and we will have a very good platform for all these EIP editing and governance related stuff. Tim, thank you so much for taking out time and sharing this platform with us. I look forward to collect some more feedbacks from you on the present process and would love to invite you for future EIP meetings. Those meeting agenda are always available on Ethereum/PM repository. Whenever you think you have some ideas and you would love to suggest those to editors to incorporate in present process, I will be happy to have you on there.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for giving me a stage today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm happy to share and join the calls for EIP IP calls. Certainly, I'll check the repository for that later.
Very well. That concludes today's talk. Listeners, please check out the show notes for additional links and resources, and we look forward to bring you the next episode soon. Until then, take care of yourself. Cheers.